They mocked Earth as a primitive death world until its silence turned the galaxy's arrogance into fear. Without firing a single shot, humanity rewrote the rules of diplomacy using shadows, memory, and reflection. When old empires tried to weaponize paranoia, Earth answered with harmony that could bend black holes. Now the universe must decide, fear what listens, or join the ones who learn to speak through restraint. Because the strongest voice is sometimes the quietest. Stay with us to find out how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. Across the spiral promenade of the Grand Hall, where holographic constellations drift beneath a vaulted roof that smells faintly of ionized silver, laughter rippled like a rogue wave. Delegates from 90 worlds, draped in silks, chitin, or biowoven light, passed around a slim report whose header pulsed crimson. Planet 279b, local name Earth, threat index, Class 1-3 Death World. A downy-feathered envoy from the Seriri trilled a theatrical choke. Next, you'll tell us their lethal weapon is fermented bean liquid. Even the stone-visaged battle chieftains of the Kina rumbled mirth. It echoed from the marble buttresses until it felt less like debate and more like a carnival joke. Only Harol, archivist of the crystalline Castisa, failed to smile. An amber sigil glowed on his wrist cuff. Protocol I Delta verified. Error probability 0.0001%. The I had never misflagged a planet in 20 millennia of galactic surveys, but the Hall had already decided the datum was a glitch. They would shelve the file, paste a comic over its label, and return to more pressing matters, such as import tariffs on singing algae. While the roar of amusement still climbed the pillars, a continent away on Observation Station 9KR, a lone technician decrypted a black box transmission from the deep wilds. The message originated from survey drone Quantian, lost 5 years earlier on a blue-white world in the minor spiral arm. Its final packet, jagged and half-burned by cosmic dust, reduced to a single line in gaunt red glyphs. Do not engage, they see everything. The technician's blood ran cold. He forwarded the file up every chain of command. Each link crashed under the weight of ridicule already saturating the net. 72 astronomical units out, buried inside a cometary shell that masqueraded as nothing but dirty ice. An entire fleet woke from hibernation. To outside radar, the nucleus remained inert, yet within its hollowed core rows of matte black vessels crackled to life. Their keels bore no registry, only a sigil etched in charged dust, a lightning stroke crossed by a quill, insignia of Ghost Squadron silence. Captain Paulina Savella, call sign speaker, unsealed a mission packet timestamped 20 years earlier. The orders were one now long. Unveil. She keyed the cradle release. Engines coughed blue fire that sublimated the comet's inner walls like frost tossed on coal. 300 crew capsules hissed open, and operators climbed from gel cradles with retinas already fed a century of espionage regarding the Galactic Assembly's every shrug. Speaker reviewed the newest dispatch, the Council's laughter, then flicked it away. Laughter was validation. Laughter meant narrow apertures of underestimation, and underestimation was the only battlefield terrain humanity truly believed it could hold forever. On Mars, beneath a surface painted in polite science settlements, the clandestine orbital foundry Red Lotus completed fit-out of Sphinx 1. The ship was a mirror wrapped around a shadow, an inner lattice of gravitic nodes, a mid-skin of phased nanocrystal able to reflect any coherent scan, and an outer shimmer of thermal noise false painted to match interplanetary debris. In plain logs, the project didn't exist. In reality, its commissioning ceremony involved no champagne, only a tripling-coated ping to Ghost Wing, ready to echo. The Assembly, regaining composure, formed a task subcommittee on erroneous planetary threat classifications. They scheduled a friendly verification cruise toward the Sol Locus, 3 light cruisers, decal stripes of Pacific intent, broadcasting universal greeting protocols every half hour. En route, they lost 5 uncrewed capsules to undiagnosed telemetry shears. Engineers blamed gravitational eddies. When the cruisers crossed Jupiter's bow shock, the flagship messenger of peace vanished. A single frame leaked through its emergency channel, an empty bridge, and, fogged on the forward viewport, a fingertip-drawn sentence in archaic Terran script. We told you not to stare into the dark. After that, static. Panic bled through every corridor of the hall. Notices once labeled jest flipped to extreme risk. The I Delta report re-entered the docket, no longer comedic relief, but harbinger. Yet pride, sticky and ancient, compelled one last test. 5 coalition flotillas massed at the edge of the Terran exclusion shell, ordered to probe defensive thresholds with limited impulse. The command left jump buffers at 710 galactic core mean. At 712, every comm panel in the flagship command bunker fizzled, screens bleaching to snow. Amid the hiss, for English words scrolled, curiosity killed your cats. The fleet withdrew without firing. Meanwhile, Earth's own surface remained paradoxically mundane. Children rode autocabs to schools. Climate councils debated coral scaffolds. Late-night comedies never spoke of a galaxy at all. But kilometers beneath Antarctic ice, inside the geothermal bastion cradle, arrays of quantum glass monitors watched a silent countdown wind past zero. The event did not trigger missiles. It merely pulsed a low-band beacon. Across the Ord, Ghost Wing answered, scattering into navigation shadows around Neptune's Trojans, each ship trailing a hush field designed not to jam signals, but to reflect them like warped mirrors. On lunar far side, an ancient hatch opened into the regolith. Telescopes beheld only dust, yet lurking beneath the gray, planetary key Cassandra unfurled thousands of photonic sails. Cassandra's purpose was not destruction. It was revelation. Each sail became a projector capable of painting any sky with high-resolution records. Records the galactic public relations bureaus had long archived as primitive tragedies. Cassandra cued them for display. The hall awoke to find its own clouds overwritten by Earth's autobiography. Above palace domes shone footage of trench lines flooded by freezing mud, medics dragging comrades through chlorine mist, and cities rebuilt from atomized ash. Every few frames a statistic overlaid. Survival temperature range -50 degrees Celsius plus 60 degrees Celsius. Refusal to surrender index 99.2%. The montage lasted 48 hours. No weapons appeared, only endurance. When the sequence concluded, Cassandra broadcast a closing line. You measured our arsenals. You forgot to measure our thresholds. The hall's raucous humor decayed into whispered crisis. Analysts who once chuckled now argued over terraforming the word untouchable. Draft resolutions proposed a white circle exclusion zone. No further probes, no diplomatic entries without explicit invitation, no weapon platforms within 8 parsecs. It passed by trembling unanimity. Hirul, sliding his data slate shut, understood the second meaning. White circles are not alliances. They are chalk outlines around something no one cares to disturb. In Pluto's penumbra, Sphinx 1 bounced a final test syllable off a council surveillance beacon. The beacon parroted the signal, flared its transmitters, and died, fried by its own rebounded wattage. Earthbound technicians laughed softly, not in mock or malice, but in relief. The window of underestimation had closed. At last, humanity could breathe outside the performance of weakness. Was that victory? Perhaps only a pause. Earth conquered no territory, fired no shot, and yet the galaxy now mapped soul inside a silent quarantine of respect edged with dread. Humanity had won by converting scorn into void and feeding that void back until it swallowed laughter whole. Some night in the near future someone might annotate star charts with a fresh epithet beside the sun, not Death World, but Echo World, the place that reflects whatever the universe throws. Until then, children on a blue planet look up at a band of hazy light named Milky Way and ask why visitors never arrive. Teachers answer with gentle smiles. Because we host only those who listen before they speak. Somewhere, far above, Cassandra's sails continue rotating. Each pass a reminder that in space, the inertia of ridicule is long, but the velocity of silence is instant. What none of the Council's crisis memos recorded, what even Cassandra's sails left unprojected, was how the Terran response took root inside individual minds far from soul. Fear seldom travels alone. It carries seeds of reverence, ambition, and in certain corners, furious envy. Somewhere in the cerulean dusk of Polyarch Station, a bartender switched off the hollow news and muttered that humans had found the perfect weapon. They had turned history itself into a minefield. Elsewhere, on an interdicted smuggler moon, a gang broker offered a bounty for one intact fragment of Terran stealth hardware, swearing it could ransom 10 planetary treasuries if delivered to the right vault. Earth's silence became a currency. Fringe warlords traded rumors like promissory notes. I know a route through the white circle. I can spoof a ghost wing reflection grid. I've seen the mountain where they keep the cradle engines. With every sail, the legend bloated. With every retelling, the risk spiked. In less than one galactic year, thrice as many reconnaissance craft were lost at the circle's periphery as in the previous 2 decades of deep space piracy. None came home with proof. All fed the myth. Inside Cradle, analysts tracked those vanished pings and charted them against a predictive heat map of desperation. The hottest zone lay not among classic aggressors, but inside the Helix League, a trade confederacy grafted together from rogue megacore after the Transitas crash. The League had once scoffed at military budgets. Now its asset sheets bled red. Major clients panicked, shipping lanes rerouted, commodities futures crashed whenever Echo World trended on the open net. The Helix board needed leverage, something to promise investors that humans were just another cartel waiting for a hostile takeover. Thus Operation Glass Key was born. The board hired Dr. Emlyn Verk, ex-council cryptographer, disgraced after she'd reverse-engineered a sovereign's medical records for academic clout. Her brief: breach the silence, steal a single Terran intel node, anything undeniably human and undeniably classified, then broadcast it live. The Helix prophecy was simple. Prove Earth's cloak opaque only from the outside, and the stock market would flood back like water through a breached dam. Verk spent 6 months weaving zero-day exploits into relay buoys around the circle. She bribed a retired Sci-Fi diplomat for voice samples, forged authentication vectors that mimicked Cassandra echoes, and embedded them in a probe no bigger than a piano, Project Needle. Needle's hull was a fractal of absorbent polymers, its drive plume disguised as rogue solar wind. Once inside Sol, it would slither through the periphery, parasite onto an ancient grav beacon, the kind humans had left operational so far to lull watchers, and siphon telemetry caches believed to hold ghost wing positional logs. All automated. No transmission until safe departure, minimal risk. Minimal, in Helix accounting. Needle launched on a sunless morning, riding the edge of an asteroid convoy, hiding beneath chunks of nickel iron to mask its wake. Its navigation AI ran the stolen Sci-Fi larynx code on loop, muttering diplomatic platitudes into static. It crossed the circle not with a bang, but with the hush of an extra meteor in a field of billions. No ghost wing interceptor stirred. No Cassandra sail changed orientation. Helix Command erupted in cautious celebration. Verk, sweating under cold office lights, permitted herself one exhale. Needle reached the decaying beacon orbiting Neptune's Lagrange 4, latched via microclamps, and began its handshake. Data spooled in, timestamps, lens logs, compressions more advanced than anything Verk had seen. She watched the transfer bar creep upward, 92%, 97%. As it clicked to 100, her console suddenly blanked. On the deep space feed, Needle's signal pulsed once, twice, then flattened. Helix engineers stared at their dashboards. No error lights. No attack logs. Just nothing. Minutes later, every comm node across the league lit with a priority broadcast, not from Earth, but from Ghost Squadron still drifting beyond normal scope. A single line in plain trade tongue. Through glass darkly you looked. What looked back cannot be unseen. Attached was a checksum, 327 exabytes of raw data that, when decoded, resolved into a perfect replay of Helix's entire glass key planning session. Every encrypted whisper, every bribery contract, every personal access code, all timestamped within milliseconds. The file terminated with coordinates to a Helix asset hub in the Typhon Expanse and a terse footnote. Return what you stole. Debts compound in silence. Within hours, Helix stock collapsed another 43%. Board members resigned on live feed. Verk disappeared from public record. Rumor said Ghostwing left her ship adrift between jump gates with every transponder broadcast swapped for an endless echo of her own heartbeat, detectable by any passing patrol. A moral lesson spelled in biorhythm. No council committee dared ask for confirmation. The council's white circle now looked less like quarantine and more like firewall, between civilizations that believed power sprang from projection and one that believed power matured in quiet. Yet total isolation was never Earth's aim. Humanity had not toiled through centuries of atmospheric math and gene drought to sit forever behind mirrored glass. They waited for the question that mattered, the invitation framed without derision. It came, unexpectedly, from the youngest of the council species, the passive-bodied Orari, whose civilization existed on floating reef cities circling a red dwarf. Their emissary, a juvenile named CEV, traveled alone in a ship half built from biofoam, half from patient curiosity. Approaching the circle, CEV sent no demand, no request for trade, only a short audio file, the sound of Orari tide organs, giant barnacle horns that sang when moons shifted their planet seabelts. The song carried harmonics of welcome, sorrow, and hope interlaced. Sev's follow-up message was 11 words. If you listen, we would trade stories, not fear. 3 Terran weeks passed without reply. Then, one night above Earth's Pacific Terminator, the sky cracked white, an aurora born not of solar wind but of hyperfine laser etching patterns onto ion layers. It arranged itself into musical notation unknown to any council databank, but matching Orari pitch ladders exactly. Beneath the glowing stave, 8 human words shimmered. Stories shape us. Approach in peace. Learn in earnest. Sev's ship was guided through the circle by an escort invisible to every council scope. Only once did hull sensors register gravitational ripples like enormous wings pivoting at the edge of perception. They arrived at an orbital ring disguised for decades as abandoned mining trusses. Inside floated individuals from every Terran culture, scholars not soldiers, ready with translated libraries and pockets full of polite caution. No weapons displayed, none needed. An epic of standoff ended with a trade of songs across a shared airlock. The council reacted with confusion spiked by rage. Rules broken, treaties bent. Yet none could deny the outcome. The Orari broadcast their meetings logged 2 cycles later. Earth, they claimed, sought dialogue, just not with those who mocked first. The recording showed humans asking more questions than they answered, offering technical insight for ocean-stressed habitats, requesting in return only spectrographic maps of red dwarf plankton blooms. It looked, disarmingly, like cooperation. High Chancellor Rither convened emergency arbitration. Hardliners demanded punitive fleets, but their own navies balked. Who would lead an assault when sensors still failed to chart the full extent of Ghostwing assets? Merchants begged for a cautious détente. Research guilds drooled at Terran bioengineering glimpsed in leaked frames. A compromise emerged. Form a neutral envoy corps. multiply species, unsponsored by council flags, to reopen contact under conditions of mutual respect. They christened it the Listening Expedition. Earth accepted, with stipulations etched in a treaty whose preamble contained no threats. Only an axiom: we will be measured by the dignity of our exchanges, never by the loudness of our doubts. Years unspooled. Slow lanes reopened. The Listening Expedition established relay pods along the circle's rim, pods manufactured jointly by Terran and Orari hands, laced with Ghostwing oversight algorithms that triggered if any single species tried to seize control. Through those relays trickled data trickles that grew into rivers, medical protocols for desert spores, string compositional software adapted for Suririi throat flutes, 4D geometric art built from Kistisan crystal logic. Terran language classes became fashionable in academies once devoted to mocking monolung primates. In return, Earth incorporated hyperdense Suririi fiber into next-gen solar sails and stitched keener stress algorithms into earthquake early warning nets. But silk threads of trust are fragile. Somewhere along the sagittal reach, an old enemy watched trade bloom and saw opportunity. The Velarai Dominon, erstwhile conquerors who had fled Earth's mirror trap with souls scorched by humiliation, spent their exile dissecting every rumor of Terran tech. Pride turned to obsession. They realized the White Circle held not only terror but treasure, an arsenal of silence-based weapons that could unseat the Council or any would-be emperor. If fear had value, control of that fear was priceless. They recruited Helix defectors still nursing bankruptcy pain, bought outlaw blueprints, and resurrected Operation Glass Key version 2. This time armed with stolen mixed-phase coils and a biological payload keyed to human mitochondrial markers. Their strategy was no longer data theft, it was sabotage. Infect the Terran inner network with a gene-coded worm latent until signaled, then blackmail Earth. Share technology, or watch your own people crumble from the inside. Velarai infiltration craft, plated in anti-reflective obsidian, threaded a comet storm, hugging thermal shadows even Ghostwing seldom patrolled. They slipped past the initial veil. They never reached Earth. In a region devoid of beacons, space itself buckled, a localized curvature spike not predicted by any mass model. The flagship skewed, instruments spun, and improvised inertial dampers caved. Hull cracked, spilling conquerors into vacuum. Capsules ejected on reflex, half imploded as surrounding metric oscillations tightened like a vice, half iced over within seconds as latent quantum frost leached heat through unknown resonance. A final audio buffer from the Velarai command module survived long enough to transmit 3 words, half scream, half him. They've been space. Static crushed the channel. The Council received the SOS, classified it within minutes, and chose secrecy. Better the galaxy believe Velarai arrogance had ignited its own drive cores than grapple with a weapon capable of folding vacuum. Yet hush cannot smother rumor. Traders reported a scar in space-time near the old comet paths, a ribbon where starlight doubled back on itself and timers ran half a heartbeat slow. They named it the whip trace. Earth issued no comment. Cassandra's sails, however, aligned into a new pattern, visible only if one overlaid 5 successive nights of slow-scan photography, a single sweeping curve that matched the shape of the whip trace precisely, followed by a dot far beyond it. A mathematician on Polyarch Station ran the curve through celestial mechanic solvers and gasped. The dot marked a future interception point outside Terran space, months hence, where any second wave might aim next. Interpretation was clear. The mirror did not merely reflect. It predicted. Within the Directorate, debate rekindled. Some urged sealing the circle with permanent fold locks, never let any visitor cross again. Others argued Earth's very survival now depended on alliances nourished by the Listening Expedition. President Ren posed a different question. Could humanity teach the art of tempered silence before the galaxy forced it to roar again? She commissioned Project Prism Bridge, an academy fleet where Ghostwing officers, Orari experiential archivists, and Suririi psycholinguists would train mixed crews in crisis de-escalation, technological ethics, and last resort deterrence. Admission would include even the Council's staunchest skeptics if they dared. Paulina Savella, promoted to Commodore, accepted oversight with hesitation. Ghostwing lived by opacity. Mentorship felt like peeling one layer too many. Yet she saw in the recruits' eyes reflections of young Earth, species forged in comfort but curious, dreaming of stars without cages of arrogance. She relented and delivered the opening lecture aboard the carrier Horizon Spire. Power is the space between heartbeat and act. We held that space with silence because your laugh was too loud. If you wish to borrow our watch, learn first to hold your breath. From across the auditorium came a flutter of keener wings, acknowledgement or challenge. She wasn't sure. Time would decide. The whip race, meanwhile, did not sleep. Astronomers noticed its curvature drifting, pausing, then tightening again, like a fist remembering anger. Models predicted a fresh bloom 6 standard months ahead, coinciding with the dot Cassandra had foretold. The Council, locked in analysis paralysis, finally requested formal assistance under the custodian accord they once hesitated to sign. Earth responded with a concise acceptance. Coordinates logged, defensive calculus underway, all data to be shared. On the appointed day, fleets assembled, ghost corvettes in dagger formation, mixed scarabs humming organ pipes of resonance, Orc high sails spread like cathedral windows. Even a token council armada arrived, flags half raised but sincere. They waited at the dark edge of nothing special. When the hour struck, the vacuum rippled, not explosive, but like silk dragged across coarse stone. A wedge of absence unfolded, revealing Vel'ari architecture grown more desperate. Bone black, enormous, armed with repurposed helix phage arrays designed for mitochondrial burn. Before any custodian ship-locked weapons, the Vel'ari flagship received a direct hail on open band. No encryption, no threat displays. A human voice, male, perhaps mid-30s, speaking with Sunday morning softness. There is still room at the table. Silence. Then the wedge fired, phage warheads blossoming toward Earth positions. The human voice did not repeat. Instead, spacebound. The warheads bent 90 degrees mid-flight, streaking into the void where no ship waited. The whip rays pulsed, flattened, and swallowed them. The Vel'ari captain ordered a second volley. Dries refused. Consoles flickered through a scroll of error codes culminating in 3 crimson letters. NOT. Ghostwing did not advance. Mixed frigates locked, but did not shoot. Orc high sails merely shifted to shadow, ready but restrained. The invitation hovered like a breath. It was the Council flagship, not Earth, that hailed next, in stilted diplomatic phrasing, offering asylum over annihilation. Pride finally cracked. The Vel'ari surrendered, weeping static across comms. No one cheered. The galaxy had witnessed warfare without a single casualty beyond kinetic ghosts and molecular husks. Months later, at a convocation on the rebuilt moon of Sharanel, an elder of the once laughing Surirei addressed the gathered species. We measured progress as the loudness of our voices. Earth measured by the quiet between. We thought them dangerous. They proved disciplined. True danger was our refusal to listen. The statement entered universal curriculum, footnoted, echo principle. Years rolled on. The white circle dissolved into the prism network, beacons of cooperative oversight. Ghostwing remained guardian but no longer myth. It published annotated playbooks on defensive silence, redacting only those portions still too sharp for general hands. Humans continued building under Antarctic ice, not arsenals but telescopes threaded into quantum foam, eager to map whispers from beyond galactic halo. They hadn't forsaken caution, they'd merely grown confident enough to hum while they worked. And somewhere in early dawn over the Pacific, a middle schooler asked her mother why Earth had hidden for so long. The woman, once a child who lived through Cassandra's first aurora, answered. Because power is like sunlight on glass. Too much. Too sudden, blinds instead of guiding. We waited until we could open the curtains without shattering the room. Above them the sky held no threatening projections, only a scattering of stars. Each, perhaps, a neighbor still learning to modulate its voice. For now at least, the universe seemed willing to speak in lower tones, and Earth, once dismissed as comic footnote, tuned its instruments to listen, reflect, and, when necessary, remind. Monsters are real only when someone insists on poking them awake. A chill stole across the hull of Horizon Spire as it coasted through the vestigial halo of the Sagittarius Rift, its sensor booms trailing comet dust like silver hair. Inside the forward observation blister, Paulina Savella let her eyes unfocus until the stars smeared into an indistinct quilt of violet. During the war of laughter and silence, she had learned to read fortunes in that blur, tiny motions, color jitters, spectral shades where gravity waves lapped unseen. Tonight the field whispered nothing dramatic, merely the low murmur of normal vacuum. Peace had an unfamiliar timbre, not quiet, exactly, but weighted in delicate counterpoint. Behind her the Prism Bridge recruits, keener cadets with mirrored chitin, Orari mistwalkers, 2 jewel-eyed Kistisan novices, tapped through data drills. Exercises mapped the delicate interplay of soft deterrence and raw physics. How to bend an incipient skirmish into negotiation by revealing just enough reflective capability. How to absorb an insult without letting it ferment into escalation. How to recognize the tension point when teaching silence became enforcing silence. They would practice until reflex replaced ideology. It was the only way to make certain a future patrol officer did not mistake restraint for weakness on either side of an argument. Yet restraint alone could not shield the galaxy forever. Paulina's private console glimmered a single high-clearance packet. Unknown quantum lattice signature. Source extragalactic. Intercept grid breach prob 12%. Escalating. Translation. Something outside mapped reality had begun pinging prism buoys with pulse trains no known hypernet codec could parse. The bursts arrived from the direction of the Great Void, past dwarf galaxy debris, where even survey I-delta diagrams wrote "Here be quiet." 3 pulses so far, spaced by prime number days, each one stronger. Paulina flicked the packet to Riatalis on Mars with a single finger. The window closed. She rose, straightened her flight jacket bearing the silver custodial star, and addressed the cadets. Flash drill. A signal we cannot translate knocks on our gate. Council pundits call it potential commerce. Border ligaments call it threat. Which protocol triggers first, and why? A keener's rightmost head answered. Listening Expedition Step 1. Send mirrored handshake requesting context. An Orari chord followed. Simultaneously patch Cassandra to rebroadcast the handshake across provisional neighbor bands. If the unknown message is harmless, wide reflection avoids misinterpretation. If hostile, reflection becomes early containment. Paulina nodded. The specifics mattered less than the shared lexicon. Each recruit should navigate the fine line between invitation and bastion. On Mars, Rhea received Paulina's alert in the middle of a curriculum meeting. She excused herself, strode through terraglass corridors where dawn painted Olympus slopes tangerine, and ducked into the secure alcove nicknamed Scriptorium. Cassandra node maps hovered like stained glass windows, webs of light showing the entire Prism network's heartbeat. 3 extragalactic pulses shone on the fringe, red, amber. The algorithm already flagged the pattern, reciprocating L-sequence prime intervals, amplitude ramping. Something, was dialing a code older than any council language, older than Earth's cuneiform, perhaps as old as mathematics. Rhea breathed slow. Fear tugged, curiosity overrode. The unknown could be another Velari gambit or an authentic welcome from a civilization beyond local metaclusters. Either possibility forced a question. What did humanity do when confronted by a mirror they themselves had no pre-written reflection for? She called President Wren, now 5 years into his second term, stigmatized in equal measure by cautious allies and resentful hardliners. Wren listened, eyes hooded but alert. We should greet in principle, she said, but not alone. The Prism Charter demands communal response. Thus a tri-council convocation assembled on Asteria Station, man-made star pier in orbit of Proxima be designed exactly for this kind of converging unknown. Terran diplomats arrived alongside council figureheads no longer willing to scoff, plus the Orari envoy CEV, now matured into Dawn Tidekeeper, voice resonating deeper chords. Ghostwing provided a discreet security veil, 3 corvettes nested in sensor null vantage, no intimidation, just calm oversight. From the void, the 4th pulse struck, apparent magnitude 10,000 times previous, crisp, diamond. It did not hurt sensors, it simply appeared within every receiver at once, like the cosmos clearing its throat. The message packet this time included a high-dimensional polytope encoded in root prime vector calculus. Earth mathematicians saw at once that the polytope couldn't exist in 3 space. Its shadow suggested an origin outside the metric thickness of the nominal universe. As if someone were telegraphing from the underside of reality's membrane. Speculation raged. Some theorized lost builders older than the Cov, some claimed a random quantum anomaly. Cassandra, however, responded automatically. It wove the projection of human endurance images into a polytope tesseract, aligning edges with prime factors. Asteria's linguists gasped. Cassandra wasn't just reflecting. It was offering context, showing Earth's most universal constant, adaptation, in a language of geometry. Minutes later, a reply pulse arrived, far faster than light could cross the gulf even with fold sheets. The polytope unfolded into a simpler shape, 4-phase simplex, indicating mutual comprehension of base factors. Under that, a glyph formed from negative space. Cassandra, by design, refrained from automatic answer past first handshake. Now Living Eyes had to choose. The council hall dithered. Hardliners urged immediate lockdown. Merchants smelled unprecedented markets. The Cererii, now ashamed advocates for humility, recommended patience. Rhea stepped forward, wearing no uniform, only a plain tunic bearing the twin-leaf seal of the listening expedition. We should do what Earth asked of us at the start, she said. Listen. She proposed a joint envoy, not of warships but of scholar vessels equipped with translation arrays from every known species, Ghostwing reflection tech as shield, but with safeties ensuring transparency logs accessible to all parties on board. The envoy would travel to the calculated intercept point, an icy dwarf star's gravity well where the next prime interval pulse forecast would converge beside a swirling dark filament nicknamed the Empty String. 3 days of debate ended in narrow approval. The envoy fleet launched, Terran research cruiser Seraphark, Orari reef ship Hush of Tides, Cererii Songark Glissando, plus 2 council composite craft. Ghostwing corvettes escorted but kept to the perimeter, hulls dim. Paulina herself remained behind, trusting protégés. Rhea embarked as liaison. The journey passed through transparent star hollows where vacuum resonances sang like distant wheels. Crews spent weeks cross-training on each other's languages. Cererii avian cadences fused with Orari tide tones, Terran consonant grids aligning to keener clicks. Shared meals turned into ephemeral symphonies of clatter and hum. Laughter, once weaponized against Earth, became bridgework. Approaching the empty string, they detected a distortion shaped like a Mobius half-loop. Space-time curvature folded so that starlight from opposite sides of the loop braided in real position. Within the loop, sensors registered negative delay intervals, signals arriving before they were sent. The fleet halted at safe distance, deployed drones. A probe slipped into the loop and vanished, no debris, no echo. Seconds later, on Seraphark's bridge, a copy of the probe materialized, pristine, with every internal clock 3 minutes advanced. It carried a new polytope, a string of increasingly complex shapes broken by the familiar glyph, now repeated thrice. Rhea mused aloud, an invitation deeper, threefold caution. After rigorous vote, the envoy elected to proceed. All ships engaged envelope fields, drive buffers throttled. Crossing the loop felt like sliding under still water, light refracted, impulses slowed to syrup, then popped back crisp. On the other side, matter behaved orderly, yet the starfield had rearranged no known constellations. They were, effectively, outside the galaxy, either in higher dimensional pocket or remote sector. In front of them hovered a lattice like crystal knitted from supercooled storm clouds, a construct kilometers across, unsheathed in armor yet unarmed. Within its facets flickered thousands of glyphs translating in real time to every database the envoy carried. The translation coalesced into 3 sentences. We heard endurance. We respond with witness. Speak your constant. Escorted by microdrones that butted from the lattice and cradled the ships gently, the envoy docked inside a cathedral bay. No life forms appeared, only self-modulating light, shifting walkway grids to match each species' gravity preference. In a central chamber, a pool of quantum mist replayed Earth survival images from Cassandra, but slowed, annotated with projected empathic overlays, a Sereriai's interpretation of trench frost, an Orari reading of nuclear night. A keener resonance of refugee song. The lattice, having studied suffering, now sought the vector that transformed it into growth. Rhea realized they were in conversation with something that valued adaptation as a universal currency. The constant it asked for wasn't weapon or secret algorithm, it was an equation of resilience and restraint. She transmitted a simple reply, crafted with the envoy teams, a tri-layered codec. Layer 1. Biochemical templates of Terran immunity adaptations. Layer 2. Musical measure melding Earth minor scales with tidehorn harmonics and Sererii counter chirps. The melody encoded prime counts corresponding to documented historic acts of mercy during war. Layer 3. A compressed log of prism regulations, the charter of how to hold power in check. The lattice absorbed the package. Light cascaded across its ribs like sunrise flooding glass canyons. Then a blossom of data returned, staggeringly rich. Fluid drive equations defying inertial counterthrust, materials science for self-healing hulls. But more crucially, an entire library of conflict avoidance heuristics derived from civilizations older than human memory, perhaps older than galactic dust. The final footer declared, share with voices that choose echo over roar. Back through the Mobius gate, the envoy carried the gift home. Exam days later, cryptanalysts confirmed no hidden malware, only astonishing civics and engineering leaps. The council trembled again, this time with hope tempered by responsibility. Dissemination frameworks were drafted with iron safeguards. Any adoption required embedding prism-style oversight kernels. For once, bureaucracy accelerated. No one wished to incite the lattice by twisting its offering into new arms races. On Earth, President Rin addressed both humanity and the wider network in a broadcast free of visual bravado. She spoke against the backdrop of the Pacific aurora, Cassandra painting ripples that mirrored the lattice's own glow. We survived by learning to mirror threat, then by learning to mirror trust. Today another mirror greeted us from beyond. The cosmos has given us lessons older than every flag. Let us not answer them with the reflex of empires, but with the steadiness of gardeners. The speech radiated outward, bounced off orbital prism nodes, echoed in tongues as diverse as carbon permutations. It ended with a call, establish a custodian lattice college, open to any society willing to audit its own violences before requesting new strengths. Enrollment demands crashed servers. Fear still existed, but aspiration now matched magnitude. Paulina watched from Horizon Spire, reflected starlight flickering against her scar. Apprentice officers gathered at the viewing glass, not to ask about weapons, but about the mathematics of Mobius gates. She smiled. Ghostwing would never lose its edge. Predators survived by vigilance. Yet maybe, just maybe, the next generation could learn to prowl with claws sheathed until necessity, not habit, unbound them. Far off, in the cold hush beyond mapped stars, the lattice turned once on its axis, like a door easing wider, then settled. No further pulses disturbed the prism nets. After all, it had asked for a constant, and the galaxy had offered one. The echo of restraint sung together by many races. Years later, historians would argue whether the turning lattice marked first contact with ascended machine culture, transdimensional nomads, or merely physics wearing arts mask. What mattered to living beings was simpler. The vast unknown had offered conversation instead of conquest, and Earth, once caricatured as a deathworld joke, had proven a translator rather than a tyrant. Under new skies, school children recited a revised pledge in almost any language one cared to sample. We will laugh, but never at the cost of listening. We will grow, but never at the cost of balance. We will defend, but never without remembering why we once chose silence. And in the quiet orbit of Pluto, the Sphinx idled, mirrors folded, engines low, guardian, witness, and reminder that the loudest powers need not shout, that a universe is wide enough for echoes of grief, hope, and caution to coexist. The stars kept their counsel, twinkling secrets into vessels bold enough to journey onward. Earth, having outgrown the need to hide, sat at the table not as monster or martyr, but as equal, ever watchful, ever adapting, and, at long last, understood. A comet that did not belong to any star chart drifted through the Helios gap, its tail a thin strand of ionized neon that never once glowed the same shade twice. The rock was artificial, sheeted in ablative ice and laced with sensor baffles so cunning that even Ghostwing's deep-patterned scouts logged it as ordinary debris at first. What betrayed it was the music. Long-range probes kept by the Orari Reef fleet detected faint graviton ripples pulsed in six-note motifs: tonic, tritone, minor third, perfect fifth, minor seventh, octave, or repeat. No natural phenomenon sang jazz chords. The Reef fleet rolled their detection up the prism spine. Alarms across the custodian mesh flickered amber, then ruby as cross-checks traced the signature to an obscure archival recording. Miles Davis, Kind of Blue, Side B, Last Track. Preserved in Cradle's historical vaults. Humanity had never broadcast that file outside Seoul. Someone, somewhere, had exhumed it for a very deliberate handshake. Protocol required a layered response. Step 1. Reflection. Cassandra's nearest sail played the riff back, slowed to half-tempo, inverted in modal harmonies borrowed from Suriri throat leads. Step 2. Patience. Step 3. Intercept if the object lingered. It did. 2 days passed, and the comet angled sunward on a trajectory that would graze the white circle's revived beacon chain. Data from spectral sniffers hinted at a payload cage at its core, built from polymer alloys seen once before in a single disgraced laboratory. The slab bore the Helix League's watermark. Paulina Savella convened a red band advisory aboard Horizon Spire, readjoined by Quantum Whisper from Prism College. Initial theory: this was a publicity stunt, Helix seeking redemption, showing they had learned the language of respect by quoting humanity's own heritage. But a retrospectrograph of dust in the comet's wake uncovered microcapsules stuffed with prion code keyed to mammalian neurotransmitter proteins. Bioweapons again, disguised as music. The League had decided that if you couldn't outsmart the mirror, you could infect the reflection source and let paranoia finish what arrogance started. Ghostwing slipped into silent pursuit. 3 corvettes shadowed the neon throat, running plasma efflux so cold it merged with cosmic background. The new recruits piloted, veterans coached. When the moment came, they used no missiles. Instead, they broadcast a perfect vinyl crackle 44 kHz noise, just loud enough to trigger the comet's internal state machine. A hatch irised.